Blast off.
Bum, ba-da-bum,
Ba-da-bum, bum,
ba-bum,
bum.
ba-da-bum. Today, Andy, on a wonderful chaos, we have Kassandra Goddijn.
I love your pronunciation with the huh. That's a nice gaha going there.
Get on with it.
We have Kassandra on, and we're going to discuss with her a topic that I've always found fascinating. And the older I've gotten, the more friends I've had who've shared with me stories that their parents were actually homeless. And when they shared it with me, my heart sunk because I thought to myself, oftentimes we say we're not supported by our parents, and that's hard enough. But then the next level is what happens is when you feel like you have to support your parents at a young age. So we're going to talk to her and about her organization and about the people she coaches. And we're going to do that on what, Bambos?
Wonderful chaos, Andy.
Just whisper it into my ear like sweet nothings. Oh, wonderful.
A wonderful chaos. Sweet nothings.
Yes. I like these sayings that I have, and I don't know, they're just things that I've heard, and I forget that they're embedded in my brain from somewhere in the past, and they come up. I couldn't tell you what sweet nothings means or anything, but I can tell you that that's something that's said. So, Bambos.
So, Andy.
How are you today?
Top of the world, Andy.
Are you?
No.
Is that right?
No, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I think since the Monday show, it really grounded me.
Oh, really?
And well, not on the day itself, but the next day when we took our walk.
Yeah.
I kind of gave everything a place.
I've still got a lot of calls about that show, that Monday show. For any of you that want to feel unsettled, that want to feel like, wow, that show didn't make me feel any more comfortable.
What was the comment that you had from the secret guy?
The best comment that I've ever gotten at the end of a show was a message that said, "Am I supposed to feel better after your show?" Question mark. And I said, no, because I certainly don't feel any better after that show. So that was a beautiful moment. Oh, should I feel better after watching your shows? It was absolutely not. So funny. Yeah, and that kind of segues into this show with Kassandra a bit, because I have a dear friend, and I remember when that friend told me that her mother was homeless, my brain couldn't quite process it. She says, my mom's homeless. She lives only a few blocks down the road in this sort of canal-like area where there's other homeless people. And then sometimes they'd bring her food or they'd bring her stuff to take care of. But what I saw in her eyes was this incredible amount of responsibility and helplessness, and utter helplessness, that she had to take care of her mom, who wasn't necessarily taking care of herself.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I could identify with that experience on any level, because I never had the thought that, wow, I never thought I'd have to really take care of one of my parents. Like, our parents, for you and me, I mean, dads were dysfunctional, abusive. Yeah. So, that was one level, but we could leave it and then say, okay, I'll leave you behind. But to think your mom or dad is on the street living under a bridge and maybe panhandling for food. So many feelings came up for me.
Yeah.
And for you, what comes up for you?
Oh, what comes up for me is another guest that we're going to have, Stephen.
Okay.
And he actually made an initiative where he brought 20 people together, and they're all business owners, very successful.
Okay.
And they took a homeless person from the street, and it's an experiment to see to what degree can they create a support system to get this person on his feet.
Okay.
And the last conversation we had was 2 days ago, and he actually shared it's exhausting, because when you're giving it to someone, it's very you're spoon feeding them, and in the end it's not sustainable. That's what he's discovering.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to discuss with Kassandra, because it follows a simple principle. If you give to someone who isn't necessarily able to take responsibility for themselves, it's always requiring you. It's no different than coaching or training. If you try to coach or train somebody who isn't ready to receive it, then it always takes more and more energy.
Yeah. So they haven't asked the question.
Yeah. And we'll often say that, right?
Yeah. And of course, I've also lived on the streets when I was a drug addict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you lived on the street, just to help me understand, we always talk about that. Did you literally?
I slept outside a smart shop on a couch, which they had sitting outside.
Okay.
And I would just turn it around and I'd sleep there. But it was on the I forgot the name of the street. It's close to here.
Okay.
And it's off the Leidsestraat. So
Okay.
a lot of British people. So I would get woken up and getting harassed.
But who would harass you?
Oh, just drunk British, German.
Oh, wow.
Tourists.
Amazing. Okay. Well, we'll get on that in another show.
No, we won't.
Yeah. I think that would be a really nice show to have with you, actually.
You just want to bring the ratings up.
All the tissues that we'll need for that one. So let's bring Kassandra on.
Shall we?
Let's dig in.
You've got control.
I've got the
if
control.
You guys haven't noticed, we've switched spots.
Yes. Bambos wanted to mix it up, so we switched spots. Hello, Kassandra.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you.
In the preamble, when we discussed before you got on, you mentioned, and I didn't say it before, it was that when you were 15 years old, you were having to confront the fact that your mom was homeless.
Yep.
And I can't even begin to imagine, like, if I think my brain sort of has this sort of shutdown when it's confronted with a challenge that it doesn't feel like it can even imagine. And this is one of those moments.
Yeah. When you said that before, I already felt, well, it's actually the same for me. It was the same for me. And I'm 53 years old. I'm starting to comprehend. Because, well, for several reasons. One, because it's just too much to take in.
Yeah.
And also because I was a 15-year-old girl. I mean, I had other things to worry about. Living in the family I lived with. So my mother, she didn't live with us anymore. I had my father and my stepmother, and I had my hands full with that. I ran away from home when I was 16. So there was a lot going on then, and I was not busy with my mother.
Like, if it's okay, if you could take me back to you at 15 years old, like how did it feel to, in your mind, know in the back of your mind that, like, mom was homeless? I might be walking on the street and I might even see her. Like, how did it feel at that age to have that lingering in the back of your head all the time?
I didn't go there. So I did not have that lingering in the back of my head. I just shut it off.
Wow.
So yeah.
It's an emotional shutdown.
Yes. Wow. And that emotional shutdown that didn't start then, that started way before that. Because my mom, she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia when I was 2-3 years old. And my father decided to divorce her because they told him that was chronic and couldn't be cured. So from that moment on, we were told that our mother was sick in her head, and we didn't take her seriously. Wow. And that was a very good way for me to cope, because it's heartbreaking.
Do you have memories of you as a child, like seeing your mom in these psychotic episodes? Is that something that you remember?
No, not really. I do remember visiting her in a mental hospital once, but that was on a good moment. So I remember her walking down the stairs, and I asked her why she didn't come back, and she said, "Well, I have to stay here." That was all. It's all in that memory. So
Yeah.
I can't remember her from those early days of my life when she was really having a psychotic episode. But I don't know how bad it was back then, really. I know how she became later on, and actually she wasn't really raving mad. She was just chronically a little bit off, a little bit shut off from reality.
And isn't it funny? Because sometimes when people are worse, it's better
Yeah.
because then you can totally discount them. But if they function a bit, it
Yeah.
can be even harder.
Yeah, but still, we totally discounted her.
Okay.
So it was me, my brother, and my younger sister, my older brother, and my younger sister, and we just didn't take her seriously, and we made jokes about her. And
Wow.
thinking about that now, it breaks my heart. But that was a way to cope.
Yeah, of course. You make light of the thing that's hardest as a way of just getting by. So I
Yes.
know that I knew that very well.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like if I share a story about my mother or my father, I notice I always feel the tears in my eyes. So and it's not going to be as impactful as how I feel you right now as you're sharing. And I'm wondering, how are you doing sharing this on a live show?
Yeah.
This moment.
I can feel it. It presses in my chest, and I can feel tears too. Yes. Yes. Especially because it's only dawning to me right now. I mean, I cannot comprehend it all the way. If I see that picture behind you guys, then it's shocking to me. Well, my mother was like that. She looked like that in her last years. Yeah.
I was thinking when my mom was killed by a drunk driver when I was 18,
Yes.
right? And as you speak, I hear a similarity in that I shut down so much that everyone from the outside would have thought that I was okay, just because I didn't exhibit I made it work. And what I noticed in my own case is that I had told the story separated from the emotions that were attached to the story for so many years that when I recounted it, I actually was so totally disconnected.
Yep, I recognize that completely. Yes, yeah. I have two storylines about my mother. The one making fun of her, and the crazy stories, how weird the things were that she said or did. And then only the last couple of years, there's that other story emerging of an actual human being being my mother. Even I was born from her, and that is still very painful, very painful.
Yeah, I think I've looked at I did this tour in the US after the Last Letter book came out, and I wrote a letter to the woman who killed my mom. And I remembered that at some point, I projected onto her as this, the perpetrator. It was so easy to create a persona that was separate, and I didn't need to see her anymore, because as long as she was separate. But it dawned on me much later that, wow, like her life kind of ended as well in that moment, because she lost all of the fragility, all of the what we do, the innocence of life. Now she's got a record, she's got a felony, she's killed a woman, and that not seeing her was a weird, and I call it a dilemma, because at first I didn't see her, and then at some point, the weird thing is I needed to forgive myself for not seeing her.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
even as I say it now, I can feel the emotions come up because
yeah.
it's weird to put it in that way, because people who haven't experienced can't understand that. Because if you're living in the world of everyone is projected on and it's very easy and convenient, but when you realize I haven't seen them, there's some degree that there's a compassion, like, wow, I actually have to forgive myself for not seeing them all that time.
Yeah, yeah, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Especially because it's my mother. Yeah.
So how do you have?
Yeah. As you were growing up and you were aware of your mother having this condition, did you have the awareness that, oh, did I inherit something from my mother?
I remember being scared for that. But it didn't it didn't own me. Like sometimes I thought, well, this could happen to me too, but there it stopped. It didn't play a very big role. My father was more scared than we were, actually.
Oh yeah.
Because
For you guys.
For us, yes, especially me and my sister. My brother, he
We lost your mic, by the way. Something just happened. Oh, now you're back again. And now you left again. I don't know what's going on, but somehow your mic is something happened. We can't hear you.
You're muted. That's what I see.
Oh, you're muted. Oh, let me unmute you. Oh, you have to unmute your mic on your side. Do you know how to do that? Oh, Nate. Oh, there you go.
Nice.
Okay, I'm here again.
Don't fiddle. Don't fiddle. Whatever you do, don't fiddle.
I'm not going to move anymore.
Sorry. So where the question was about your dad. Dad being more concerned than you necessarily were.
Yeah. My brother, he moved to the United States when he was 17, so he fled the whole story.
Yeah.
And he was doing great there. So my dad didn't have to worry about him, but he worried about me and my sister because we both developed mental issues.
Yeah.
Especially anxiety, fear. And he thought we would go the same way as our mother. But we never thought that it would be that bad. We could feel the difference, which actually is a thing that I see around me a lot in this group that I'm coaching, like the children who were raised by parents with mental issues, but they have grown up, that their parents, they had what they call a mental health issue, or maybe a disease, what they call a disease. And we, as their children, we just call it mental problems, or not something like a disorder.
Yeah.
And then you would think that it's a different thing. It's a different thing what happened to my mother or to me. But I found out during the years that it's exactly the same. It's just not as bad. It didn't develop as far.
You have to go into that a little bit more, because I lost you so you were saying, could you clarify a little bit more, because you're making a distinction there that I don't necessarily yet understand completely.
Okay. So we usually make the distinction between mental problems like psychiatrical or just psychologist needing. I don't know in English the words, but
like something that needs medication or something that doesn't need medication.
Yeah, that's the distinction that we make, but it's false. I think that's a false distinction. It's
we oversimplify things just to make it easier. But I got you. Okay.
But we all do. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say is what I learned from my mother's issues and my own issues. That is the same stuff.
Okay.
So if I don't take care of myself and I lose myself in my anxiety or whatever it was that I developed, then I could end up like my mother too.
Wow. That's quite profound. Because I would agree that I could end up just like my dad. There's no reason that, yes, the same, there was a lot of attributes, of course, that I embody that he also had. And I took certain responsibility, and it's always a nature nurture question. Like, the question is, could he have taken responsibility given whatever chemicals were in his brain or his inability to, that's always a fine question, because then it's always, you could get a lot of people angry at you because you're like, no, it's a disease. No, he could have, so it's a fine line between where you play there. But I'd argue in agreement that if I didn't take responsibilities for certain areas of my life, I certainly could have ended up as I did in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And so did I.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I think is, it's underneath, it's trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma.
That's trauma. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Kassandra, so in fact you were actually not raised by your mother.
No, she was there during the first 3 years of my life, and of course those are the most important years.
Yeah.
That's your blueprint, and my blueprint was a relationship with a mother who wasn't there, who wasn't present in her own eyes. So that was pretty well, that's a thing that I can still feel.
Yeah.
I have difficulties sometimes still feeling my own ground, carrying myself like an adult, because I wasn't carried when I was a baby.
Gotcha.
So that was only the first 3 years of my life, in which, of course, crisis happened. My father finding out, and of course, doubting what should I do, and there was a lot of stress. And in the end, they dragged her out of the house for how do you call that, to go into a mental institution.
They institutionalized her.
Yeah, they institutionalized her by force, and I was there as a 3-year-old kid. She was dragged out of the house in front of me.
And you remember that as a 3-year-old?
I only remember the feeling.
Oh, wow.
I cannot. I don't have the images, or of course they told me the story later on, but my body remembers.
Wow.
Yeah, of course. Wow.
Yeah.
I notice sometimes we're not very good interviewers, and when I notice that most, Bambos, is when people like Jessica post really good questions, and I think, God, why didn't we think of that? So let's bring on Jessica's questions, because they're so good that I'm like, wow, these are really good questions, Jessica. And Jessica is obviously the person that we mutually know, which is why you're here today.
Yes.
So what, like with all the stories, what was the effect that this had on your life?
Yeah. So when I was a young child, the effects. Well, there of course there was more things happening. When my mother was institutionalized, we had to go somewhere, because my father, in those days, it wasn't normal that a father would take care of his kids. He had a full-time job, and he continued working. So we were put into different places. The 3 kids, and those weren't necessarily good places either. So all that together, when I was 5 years old, my father remarried. So he brought us all back together. And that, of course, the intention was that it would be happily ever after. We would live happily ever after with our stepmother. But there was a relatively peaceful start then, and that's when trauma comes up. I mean, then it gets the space to be seen.
Yeah.
So I was really a very troubled, anxious little girl, especially with friends at school, and kids. They just smell it if you're not secure.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
so I got bullied a lot, and so did my brother and my sister. So it kept piling up.
It reinforced itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So the trauma kept piling up. It never stopped.
Wow.
So as a young child, a lot of bullying at school and being unhappy, being very rational. We were all very rational because we had a very rational father, and intelligence was important in our house. So we were fighting to be the smartest. So feelings, they were ruled out by then.
Oh, wow. Did you even have that sort of, we can rationalize the emotions away if we talk about it and we actually analyze what has happened? Was it that kind of environment?
No, because we didn't talk about it at all. No.
You didn't talk about it at all?
No, we didn't talk about what had happened, or this is my cat.
Nice.
She's pushing the camera or the laptop. No,
was that because if there was a mention of it, there was tension,
Yeah.
or everyone was just suppressing it?
There was tension if it was mentioned, because sometimes things happened. I mean, we had a good how do you call that? Omgangsregeling. The
environmental rules or something, the protocols of how you lived, that kind of thing.
No,
Jessica will write it in the comments. I know she's very active with us now.
When the parents get divorced, they make decisions about where the children go at what time. So we always went to our grandmother, my mother's mother, and there we saw our mother. And of course, sometimes things happened there, and we mentioned that at home sometimes, but that gave a lot of tension. My stepmother, she didn't know how to handle that, because obviously she had a rival who was crazy. So there was something we felt tense. And also my father, he was afraid to talk about it, I think. It was very emotional for him as well. I mean, what I told you about my father, that he divorced my mother, that sounds really harsh and cruel maybe, but she was the love of his life. So he made a sacrifice. And we could feel that if we talked about her.
Oh, wow.
So we all just walked around the subject. I have to push my cat away here.
It's okay. We can bring the cat in.
Yeah, well, she's only at the backside of the laptop, pushing around. So
the way you're talking about it, Kassandra, it sounds like you, until this day, you haven't spoken about this with your father.
No, I have spoken with him about it. Yeah, especially the last 10 years or so. It's more of a topic to talk about. Yeah, so the tension in our family was there all the time that I lived there, and I ran away from home when I was 16. So until my 16th, well, we didn't talk about it a lot. It was too painful for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of when I mentioned after my mom died and we would like be around. It was very infrequent that we discussed it, because even like when emotions came up, it wasn't the emotions were seen as something that were good and that were welcome part. It wasn't that there was anything negative. Like it was almost, I wouldn't call it actively negative. It was more like we don't even know how to allow these emotions to exist. Like even on the show, sometimes I was saying to Bambos, we had a show where he was quite emotional a few days back, and a lot of viewers were feeling uncomfortable because they didn't know how to hold space for that emotion. So they're like, why are you triggering emotions?
Yeah. That was the same in our house. Yeah. So triggering emotions, that was not done. And the only way we could talk about it was making jokes.
Yeah.
And I remember my father sometimes being a bit hurt about those jokes, which
really?
I can really understand now. Yeah.
Wow.
There's so much, like there's so many dynamics happening, and like I know I'm just sitting here and I just can't catch up with everything that you've shared with us. I am aware that the subject is my mother was homeless, and I notice a curiosity to go a little bit into that space, if that's okay for you.
Yes, that's okay. Yeah.
Like, how did that look like, and how did you visually experience that, and emotionally?
I started experiencing that and realizing that, I think, after I started living on my own, because before that we saw our mother at my grandmother's place. But after I started living on my own, she started to visit me. And she would always be walking, pushing her moped, because her moped wouldn't move by itself. So she would be pushing it. And then if I asked where she came from, then she mentioned something about 40 kilometers away. And then I asked her, have you been walking all the time? Well, half the time walking, half the time the moped, maybe it moved. So I started understanding, hey, what is she doing? I mean, if she walks that far, she cannot come from home, or she cannot go back home. So that's how I realized that she must be sleeping somewhere on the road. And of course, also she looked like the man behind you guys. She looked like a wanderer, so if we see her in the city, we lived in the city of Utrecht back then, my sister and me. Sometimes we saw her walk, and the first thing you think was, oh, there's a vagabond, or I don't know the right word, but a homeless person. Yeah. And then after that, oh, okay, that's our mother.
Wow.
Just blows my mind.
Just Bolalong, he's the third person who's always on our show, and he just writes, as I listened further to Kassandra experience, I feel so much pain in me. And I think I would say for all of us, because on the show, half of the show is us feeling as you speak and letting that sort of be inside of us, and it isn't easy.
No, it's not easy at all. No.
As we listen to you, it's I know we're no different in that case. There's a lot of feelings that come up. So even to ask more logical questions, sometimes it's hard to be on this end, because on one level you just want to cry and just let the feeling be.
Yeah.
When you would have seen your mom, and did something break with a cat?
Yeah, well, it's not very bad.
It was just the last thing my mom ever gave me.
So let's make a light joke. You mentioned dog, but not cat.
Yeah, there's a cat and a dog.
Oh, yes.
And now that the cat broke something, the dog is coming, da-doo, da-doo, da-doo. Should I do something? Should I do something? So maybe we will...
we got to ball out the cat. When you'd see your mom on the road, I mean, my heart sinks if I thought that I'd see one of my parents living on the street. And you said earlier you separated emotionally. So So
Yeah.
even as you saw her, you would have just sort of shut down to the feelings that came up. Is that true?
Yeah, I remember one time that it really did dig in. That was a very sad thing that happened. I was living on my own, and I was doing my exams, my school exams, and my mother would visit me without giving me a notice. So she would just stand at the door, and so I was preparing for those exams, and then she came round, and she was always welcome in my home, so she'd stay there a couple of days, but she was also asking for my attention the whole time. And normally I could just sacrifice myself and give her all that attention, but at that point I couldn't because I had to study for my exams. So I got very stressed, and at one point I burst out and I told her to fuck off and to go away.
Yeah.
And she did. And after that, I started crying, of course, very loud. And I heard from the people downstairs. We had a pub, and they told us that my mother went in there and cried too. So my sister and me, we were both living in that house, and we needed to get out because of all the feelings. So that's when we went for a walk in the streets of Utrecht. And I remember that we turned a corner and we saw her in front of us. And that really hurt. That really hurt. I can still see her her back like that, bent like that. And and we both felt the same thing. And we ran away. We literally ran away. And we shut off again because
it was too much.
It was too much. Yeah.
Like, as you're sharing, and like I also, when I was a drug addict, and I have flashbacks of me shouting or being angry or even being violent.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to find compassion for that younger version of me that was very. So how do you relate to that version of yourself as you speak?
I forgave myself, and I know my mother forgave me too. She died when I was 21, and after she died, it may sound funny, but after she died, I developed a very good relationship with her.
Yeah.
Because she felt, as a dead person, she felt just being loved. That was the only thing that was left of her.
Yeah.
And that, of course, I could relate to and start to relate to. And I'm still in that process because I'm getting older, and I'm older now than she ever got. She lived till 52, and I'm 53 years old now.
Wow.
So, but I'm still processing.
And how did she die?
Cancer. She had breast cancer, which of course wasn't treated well because she didn't go to the doctor, or she did. Well, one time she went in the one town, and then she would go to another town and think, oh, I'm bothered by this disease, so I go to the hospital there. That was the way she had herself treated. So there was no continuity in that. So that was very nasty too. She had one big wound where her breasts should be.
Yeah.
So and it was very slow too. It took about 8 years till she died. Yeah.
And it's, the second book that I wrote was called The Wounded Healer, because of course I've seen it reflected in me and most of the people I'm in contact with, that once they've healed, their kind of gift is able to hold space for other people who have suffered the same thing. And yet maybe you're 1 or 2 steps ahead of the other person, so you can support them. I think it's always you're always delusional to say, "Oh, I've solved this, and now
Oh
I can
no.
help others." That's like the arrogance of
Yeah.
thinking you know. But in a
No, I
way,
keep
you
processing.
so you then what makes that you then decide to work for this organization that it's called COPE, COPP.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's not really an organization. It's just the name of the people who grew up like that.
okay.
So just what you are mentioning, I'm a step ahead, but it's the same experience. So I found out that sharing my experience was useful, and sharing my coping, my way of processing was useful to other people. So that's how it started.
Mm-hmm.
It made people happy to see that they could gain more space in their emotions and their heads, like I have too. I mean, when I was 20, 25 years old, my life was like that, very narrow. I didn't have a lot of energy. I was afraid of everything. So that changed tremendously, and I found out I can help other people uh, doing that too, making that space.
And also, you're not alone in the world.
Yeah.
No.
Did you ever have, like, if you're sharing your story and over again? I remember Andy sharing in his book again, just to reference that. Every time he wrote a last letter, he would also go to the cry space, and it really had a heavy impact on him emotionally after doing that for 3 months, every 2 days. I don't know how many times, 60 times.
Yeah.
So how is that for you? I mean, you've chosen this to live this.
Yeah. Um, well, if I don't go there time and time and time again, and it's all different places. It's not all about my mother. It's also about my father. It's also about a lot of other stuff that happened. So, but if I don't go there, then my life will narrow up again.
Mm.
So I need to go to the pain to be able to grow. And I found out the hard way. I mean, there was a time between 20 and 30 about that I was kind of I don't know how you call those people, somebody who lives in a cave and doesn't come out.
An introverted sort of lifestyle.
Hermit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hermit. Yeah.
Monk.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but not as holy as a monk, though. I was more depressed.
It was more like, fuck them, I'm not going out.
No, not even fuck them. No, because fuck them. That is
Yeah.
energy. That is anger. I didn't have that anger and energy at all.
Understood. Yeah.
So that I had to gain anger. Yeah.
This also comes from Andy's book, and he had an interview on a TV show in the States, and one of the interviewers asked Andy, if you could go back and write and share one thing with your mother, what would you share?
Mm.
And I'm wondering, what would be the thing that you'd love to say to your mama?
Yeah, that's a painful one.
Mm.
Yeah, I tell her I love her.
Yeah.
Because I never told her, and I only ran away from her, and I made fun of her. And, so I tell her I love her, but she knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in life, I think she was mocked. Is that an English word? Mocked?
Yeah. Yeah.
By everyone. I mean, she lived on a campsite for a couple of years, and we heard the children of the campsite calling her a witch and laughing at her. And she was mocked by the whole world. Nobody took her seriously.
Yeah.
Do you think if this had happened today to her, just because the way we understand mental illness is different from back then, would there have been a different way of interacting with her in terms of the medical world, or once you get a label, you're just that? Because the way you spoke about it in the beginning, it was she had a condition, she was diagnosed, but it wasn't to the point where you were in danger as a child, for example.
Yes, we were in danger as children.
Okay.
Yeah, not because she was really doing mad things, or maybe it was a mad thing. She would just lock us up and go.
Oh.
And my dad, he got phoned on his work that we were hanging out of the window.
Oh, wow.
Upstairs. So we were
Yeah.
in danger.
Yeah.
But not because of abuse, or it was neglect.
Neglect, yeah.
Yeah. But in these days, I don't think there has been that many changes, or there have been changes about maybe 20 years ago. There was way more money and attention for prevention, but that's all gone now again.
Yeah.
So and there is no treatment for such severe what they call mental illnesses. There's no treatment. They don't have a treatment.
Yeah.
I think the treatment is trauma work, but that's not what the mental institutions feel like it is. That they don't feel like that's the cause.
Yeah.
So there's only medication, and sometimes they lock people up, and that's all they do.
Did you ever dig into your mother's past, her childhood, to better understand her?
Yeah, that's a part of my work. I'd say for other people, I do the same thing. But of course, I reflect on my own family as well. And you can't know everything, because a lot of people have already died, so they cannot tell the stories. But what I do know, I knew my grandmother very well. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was kind of my mother, really, because she took over her role. And she told me she came from a family of 10 children, and she was about halfway. And in those days, you just had to take care of your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So she did want to marry, but she didn't want children of her own. She really did not want to take care of children again.
Wow.
Yeah.
But in those days, you didn't have a contraception. Is that what you call it?
Contraception, yeah.
You just had kids. So my mother was the first, and I can really imagine a woman being pregnant with a child and not wanting it. That has a tremendous influence. It's an influence that I have experienced myself, because my mother, she wasn't connected with me at all when she was pregnant with me. So looking back at what could have caused my mother's problems, it was definitely part of it was definitely the relationship with her mother. And also in that family, there was some strange behavior going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's still hard to really catch, but it was like a culture of not talking about problems. That's for sure. Not talking about problems. Not talking about feelings. But there was a lot going on.
Yeah. It's always weird when you have that feeling like there's so much more going on that I don't know, but I know there's a lot there. Like there's a sneaking suspicion that's so there, but you just don't know what the real details are, right?
No, but you can feel it.
You feel it.
Yeah.
There was something you said earlier that we didn't go into, but it touched me, and I've said it myself, and I think it's hard for other people to understand it who aren't processing their emotions or are having challenges, is that like I lived with my own emotional shutdown for so many years that when I started to invite the sharing and the sadness that would come up in the moment it was felt, others felt uncomfortable sometimes. Oh, it's exaggerated. It's not needed. Haven't you gotten over that by now? You know, so all of these things happen. And then I realized, well, I'm dead inside emotionally if I don't allow it.
Yes.
And yet, if half the reason why I didn't allow it for the 30 years is because of everyone else's reaction to me when I do allow it. So I kept saying, I'm not doing it because I'm making you uncomfortable, but in that I'm the one that's stuck sitting in the uncomfort all the time.
Yeah. And that's exactly the decision I had to take, not to do whatever it was I wanted to do for the others, but to make my own decision here. For me, it's necessary. It's the only way to contact these feelings and to go through them. It's the only way.
Yeah, but it's hard for society or people or friends and family who went through the same thing, dealt with it the way they've learned to deal with it, compartmentalized it so they could survive. And then why is Kassandra being such a bitch? Because come on, all you should do is just be normal. Just be normal. So how is it for you to kind of in some weird way come out of the closet? And how do you feel? How do you see them reacting to you and you making these steps?
Yeah, well, by now it's all fine again, but it has been not so fine for a lot of years.
Really?
Yeah. We all cope in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And I am the kind of person who would go to the bottom of everything. And of course, that annoyed my family. I was always self-centered. I was self-centered because I was going to the bottom of everything in myself.
Why do you need to be that way, Kassandra? Why can't you just?
So, as you're doing this show with us, do you have like in the back of your mind, oh, they're going to watch this?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
and do you think they can embrace you in this, if that's okay to ask, or do you think that there's going to be a conversation?
No, by now I think it is possible. Yeah, of course I'm doing this job, and all my family, of course, know about that, and they see that I'm successful in doing what I do. So that makes them take me seriously, and I make little animation stuff on my website, and I'm sure they've all seen them. So, so they know what I'm up to by now.
Yeah,
yeah, and sharing it becomes easier. We really recently lost our grandmother. She passed away a month ago.
No, sorry to hear.
Age of 109.
Yes. Your mother's mother?
Yes, my mother's mother.
Oh, 109.
109.
Wow. She must have been up there with some of the oldest people in the Netherlands.
She lived across the border in Belgium. So the oldest people in Belgium were older. So she never got to be the oldest. But she passed away, and that made me and my sister reconnect. Because that's what happened. What happens if people pass away?
It's so true.
Yeah.
You know, when my dad, my mom died when I was 18, but my dad died many years later. And what I noticed was that if you've got an adjutant in a system, or in your case, grandma wasn't the adjutant, but if you have somebody that sort of, you feel like they're the holder of the group, then you kind of in your mind delegate it up, like, oh, they'll be the ones that take care to make sure that and what I noticed is when my dad died, all of a sudden the relationship with my brothers felt for me much closer. Because in some ways we didn't have to say who's the one fighting with dad now. And if the topic of dad comes up, you'd feel the constriction and it would never be comfortable. So there'd be always one thing in the back of everyone's mind that you would never want to bring up because it never ended well. So when he was gone and that stress was gone, it was like, wow, now we can have a relationship as adults.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah.
Just you and me. We don't need to think about this outside person who's leveraging, if you're written out of the will, you're written out of the, like one of us has been written out of the will at any given moment in our lives, right? And then that puts a dilemma on each of the other ones, because you're like, if he dies and he's written out of the will, what happens then? Then I get all of his money, like it was the worst situation to feel that kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can identify with, but in this case, your grandma wasn't the adjutant. So what made it that the relationship improved after she was gone? What happened?
Because we both, and my brother too, but he still lives in America. But she was the ground we walk on, our grandma, because my mother, she couldn't give that to us. Our grandmother has given that to us, and of course, when somebody dies, then you're going to talk about the meaning that they had in your life. And my sister, she wrote a wonderful speech for the funeral, in which she expressed that. That was really beautiful. Yeah.
I have a question about your grandmother and your mother as a relationship. Like during that time, did your grandmother know that your mama was on the streets? And how was that?
That's a good one. I don't think she realized.
Wow.
I don't think she realized. It wasn't so obvious. Because she had a what they call mobile home at that campsite. Didn't live there all the time. So I don't think my grandmother has realized that. No.
Because I can imagine in those times there were also like hippie communities in the Netherlands, and in those times it was quite normal to be living in campers and abandoned buildings, like we call them squatters, right?
Yeah.
So I can imagine your grandmother didn't.
No, she just thought she was living on that campsite, and my grandmother, she also shut her eyes on it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, too painful for her as well, of course.
Yeah, I would have thought for her it would be terrible to see your daughter living like that and not. And the thing I've noticed in the Netherlands, I was passing a homeless guy who every day begs me for money, every single day. So much so that I feel this tension inside of myself. One time I'm like, fucking man. And I know where he lives because he goes on the north-south line. He lives somewhere up north, but it's better to beg in the center of the city because there's more money and more activity here. And I had this very weird moment yesterday. I'm walking down the street and I'm so annoyed with the guy every day, always asking, and he can't open a bottle, So I'm looking there and I'm like, everything in my heart says, oh, just help him open but just twist the bottle open. But then I'm like, shit, now I'm going to welcome interaction with this guy every day after that, because now he sees me as somebody that's compassionate. So I walked by, but I felt like shit because I'm like, oh no, my heart's like, oh, just help him out. It's the sweetest thing, and this and that. And then the next thing is like, oh, now I'm the target of him every single day. Right? It was a funny one of those weird experiences that you have.
Yeah.
I want to bring it back a little bit.
Please.
So your mother was a child of 10 kids.
No, sorry, my grandmother was. My mom was one of 5.
One of 5. Okay. And in those relationships, the brothers and sisters also never, like, I'm always thinking about my family, my brother and sister, pretty much until today. I'm 44, and they still ask me if I need money. And
really?
And I was still a drug addict, but I don't remember. I was on the phone with my sister, and I remember I had to go to Cyprus to get an operation. But I remember she was really upset with me when I had told her how far I had gone. And I'm wondering, I mean, knowing knowing how people don't communicate, like the shutdown, like was there any communication between your mother? Like, did they know, hey, she's got this mental problem?
Yeah,
Do we
yeah.
check in with her every now and again, or was it like everyone in their own world?
It's different. There were four. So my mother was she was number one, but the fifth. So they all dealt with it in their own way, but they tried to help her. For instance, one of my uncles, he gave her an abonnement, like she could
subscription.
Yeah, she could eat for free in a certain place. Okay. That was a real good gesture of him, and I think she even used that. But usually she would push away everything that was given to her, or she'd accept for a while, but then she'd make. For instance, my grandmother, of course, she told her, "You can come live with me," and she even arranged a house with a special place for my mother to live, but she couldn't
receive.
Well, for a week or 2 weeks, and then it was finished.
Yeah, she couldn't live the pattern and the yeah.
And she could not live up to the expectations, of course. I mean, she needed her chaos.
Yeah.
I think it's same with her brothers and sisters. They tried to take care of her, each in their own way, but couldn't receive it.
Like, I have to say, it feels like since we're back from our sabbatical, the shows have been quite touching different parts of me. Like, and this one has been equally challenging for me to stay with it. And as I'm sitting here, I just see embracing pain to create a meaningful life.
Yeah, you would normally on a show like this, Bambos, I see when a show is more sensitive, he'll often shut down. And I've been quite fascinated today. I was curious because in a way you stayed attuned in a way and that I'm not used to you when dealing with subjects that hit you in a way that is not easy. So what was different for you today?
Oh, just we tend to talk after each show, so getting feedback and also I've kind of committed not to suppress anymore anything, and to the best of my ability, that's how I'm choosing to live.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah,
thanks to you, Dad.
I had a few things come up for me as you were speaking, and I also thought it would be nice to bring them back. We're already over time, but sometimes it's fun to at least bring them back. And I see if I can even remember what they are. Maybe I can't remember what they are. But I think one thing that you mentioned that was nice was that for some part of your own journey, Bambos is also sharing his own story. And of course, his family is listening to him. And he's still like dealing with the reality that the things that he's working out aren't necessarily comfortable. It's like, what do they call it? Like putting out the family laundry or something. Is that the term?
Do you know what happened?
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I won't mention names, but sometimes a family member, did that really happen?
Yeah.
And I'm like, as far as my experience was, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, do you ever get that? Like people in your surroundings being in denial, or actually, I don't even want to judge as being in denial, but maybe it was so painful that they blocked it, that they gave another label to it or another experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Your mom was never really homeless. She just didn't have a place to live.
Something like that.
Yeah. I know Bolalang, who's basically the third person. He's our conscious for the show. He says the show has left me without words.
Yeah.
It's
he also shares something which used to be a reality in my country. And he says in Africa, by default, your parents are your responsibility. They come and live with you when they no longer manage to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Communities.
Well, I'm very, very well, that sounds really weird, but I was very happy and relieved when she died.
Yeah.
Because I really couldn't have taken care of her, and
Yeah.
still I would have had to.
Yeah, it was one of the questions when we had Jessica, who was on the show earlier, and it was maybe one of the hardest questions I had to ask her,
Mm.
knowing, because it's one of those things, how do I address this? Like, how relieved were you when your mom died?
Yeah.
Right? Knowing that it's feeling, but there's the paradox, as you feel the pain at the same time as the relief, and you don't know, it's hard to
Yeah.
make peace with that.
Yes, it's very hard to make peace with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of relief as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty much impossible to take care of a mother who has never taken care of you.
Yeah.
I mean, there is such an anger inside and
Resentment
inside. So it's pretty much physically impossible.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there was no spaciousness to receive help
from her.
Yeah.
That's true too. Well, I never offered her to come and live with me. But if I would have done that, it would have probably have been the same as with my grandmother. So she would have stayed 2 weeks and then she would have wandered again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. It never ceases to amaze me when we are on these shows that the one thing that there's a lot of empathy. So as you speak, there'll be the feeling coming in and processing how it is. And what always messes with my brain is that when I let your reality come into my head, like I can already feel the shutdown of trying to process that at that age. Even now, it would be hard to see. But and so thank you. And for people that would be interested, and of course, it's in the Netherlands, but if people would like support, I know I've written this down. It's for children of parents with a mental illness, and that's not the Dutch version of it.
Jessica de Vries wrote it in the comments also.
So if someone would like to contact you, how would they do that?
Yeah. Jessica mentions COP. So if people want to contact me, they just have to add coaching to that word. COP coaching. That's my
COP coaching.
COP coaching.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you guys too. And I realized that I think it's maybe the first time that I spoke about my mother with so much feeling, so without shutting off all the time.
Yeah.
So that's a compliment to you guys. You created this. Thank you.
That's really, I would say that's the hardest thing for me to receive. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
We will see you, I imagine, for the next show that we think of a good idea for. We send you love.
Something lighter to the best of
our
ability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We send you a hug. Yeah. Thank you.
Adios.
Yeah, I send you a hug too. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
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 So I'm just pulling up my phone to see what shows we have this week.
Wow, Bambos. I'm really, I said it before, and I think it's really beautiful. I noticed you were in an interesting way. You became very active. So it was a point, and I don't know if it was an active point in you when you turned yourself into a more active listener or active, but it just felt that way. Is that my perception, or was that what you experienced as well?
That's what I experienced.
I even saw you kind of sit up a little bit, and then it was like you turned on like the active part of your brain, like what would be the question that would, it was really beautiful to be with you and experience you kind of holding that. Yeah. How is it for you to do that? Because I don't know how you did it. So how was it to be there and to be there with them?
it's always hard for me to explain because it's not something that happened from one day to the next. It's been a process.
Yeah, but I mean, today when you did it, how was it in this moment to do it?
Presence.
Okay.
Just allowing the pain to also be there, and
okay.
And as Kassandra was speaking, of course, I can also feel my own story in that.
Mm-hmm.
And there comes empathy, of course. Like now that she's hanged up, it's like, oh, like I remember hanging up on Monday, for example, and sitting with the aftertaste in my body of our show. So I can imagine the repercussion it has with her right now.
And what would you imagine that to be like? What would you feel?
I think the thing which, if I'm her, I would call my girlfriend and receive love or sit in silence. It's one of the two.
Oh yeah, just let it ground the energy that came up.
I just see the dog coming into her.
Yeah. I saw the cat, the kind of saying, "Hey, looks like you could use some love right now."
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I just wanted to acknowledge it because it is. We'll talk about it off air, but now that we are on air, why not share that? Can you tell us who we have on?
Tomorrow, guys, stay tuned. Please stay on your screens all day long.
Yes, we're going to discuss a person who has a very strong idea, and this person, you're going to laugh. This person came through Chris Garrell. And Chris Garrell. So I forgot that this person came through Chris.
Yeah.
And I talked to this person, and you're going to laugh. You know what the first thing I did?
What?
I called up Chris Garrell and said, you got to talk to this guy. Forgetting that Chris, because so many people say you got to talk. So actually he has, he's creating and curating content on the internet to help coaches teach and put their content out. And he's done a lot of companies. He's well known. He's gone to Harvard Business School, and he's done a lot of things in his life. So we're going to discuss that with him.
Okay. And Friday, guys, from prisoner to setting families free.
Yes. We're going to have Mark Olmsted back on, and we missed the first show with him. He's going to tell us a bit about one of those stories of from the depths of pain to the hilltops of success and all that kind of stuff. So that's it for us today.
Oh, and Sunday, myself and but it's not live. It's not live.
Oh, it isn't live.
It isn't live.
No, it isn't. Oh, it is probably live. It is live.
StreamYard, right?
It's StreamYard. Yeah.
On Sunday, myself and Andy will be interviewed by one of our past guests.
Yes, Chris Palmore. And he is going to talk to us.
I have no idea what we said yes to.
We said yes. He gave me the topic yesterday, and I said change the name of the show. The show was called A Wonderful Chaos. And I said, listen, let's make it so that people might want to watch it. And then I thought, oh, you know what? I think, what does the show mean to me? And I thought, oh, be the thing you want to see in the world. And then I thought, okay, then let's make that be the topic of our show. So 2:00 on Sunday, we're going to do a show where the topic is be the thing you want to see more of in the world.
And what time is it, Andy?
2:00 on Sunday.
And we're going to post it on our wonderful
And
chaos.
we'll post on the wall. And that is it for today. We love you. Till next time.
On a wonderful chaos.
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 Chaos.